in a time when data is big. There are so many numbers we can look at within our businesses. Gross sales, average customer spend, number of sales, frequency of purchase, margin, net income, operating income, conversions, followers, likes, and the list goes on and on and on. One of the most helpful things to learn as a business owner is what data is important and what can be ignored. It's going to be very different depending on your type of business, but I've come across one word that summarizes the data I believe is the most important for every single business. This word led me from one industry to an entirely different one, and if you're not careful, it might mess with you as well. Welcome to the Fife Movement. I'm your host, Amanda Neely. This is the only movement that helps our generation create our unique, feminine, and entrepreneurial approach to financial independence. First, some context. Now, I started my first business with totally the naivete of a child. I wasn't concerned about the money. I was only concerned about the impact the business would make, my own personal growth, and learning by pursuing my passion and doing what I felt called to do. And it wasn't too long before I realized just how naive I was. The mantra I adopted at that time was, I cannot solve poverty from the edge of poverty myself. I cannot solve poverty from the edge of poverty myself. And I resolved to find a way to end my own entrepreneurial poverty. Sure, to everyone else, my business looked successful, but I knew it was at the personal expense of me, my husband, and our way of life and living in the world, right? We were literally on the edge of poverty. Around that time, I heard this guy, Mike Michalowicz, on a podcast talking about this concept he called profit first. The basic idea was that the generally accepted accounting principle, they say gross revenue minus expenses equals profit. But he was turning that on its head to say gross revenue minus profit equals expenses. And I was like, I got to try this. This seems like the solution to my own entrepreneurial poverty. And I thought it was simple enough, right? So I jumped in, thought I'll try it just from knowing those things alone. What we did was we decided to take a basic salary from the business and then figure out how to run the business with everything else. Salary was nothing major, just enough to be above the poverty line. But that decision to take our profit from the business as our salary changed everything. And that's what led me to the conclusion that this word profit is the most important word in business. And it was only further solidified when I heard some executive from Whole Foods on a panel say, if it's not profitable, it's not sustainable. If it's not profitable, it's not sustainable. If a business isn't profitable, it's not going to stand the test of time. Sure, it might eat up the investments of sharks and venture capitalists, and if it gets big enough, the stock market. But ultimately, if there's no profit, there's no business, at least for very long, in the grand scheme of things, right? And as we started taking our own pay first before the other expenses, we started to discover ways to make sure the business could still operate as well. Then we started to think, what's the next step? And the next step actually ended up involving selling that business and starting a new venture. And with that new venture, we decided to do things right from the beginning. We paid ourselves like clockwork. We ran the rest of the business accordingly. But we were still wondering questions like, are we saving enough to pay for taxes when tax time comes? How do we know how much we can really spend on our operations? And what are the right things to, spend that money on? And so forth. Around that time, Brandon got me the official copy of the actual book, Profit First. This is what it looks like. This is the original copy he gave me. It was under our Christmas tree, or under the tree Christmas morning, and I devoured it. But January 1st, we were like, let's do this. Let's fully implement the complete system as it's outlined in the book. And if you're not familiar, Profit First takes that simple formula, gross revenue minus profit equals expenses, to a more complete formula. I want to kind of show you on my screen here what it looks like if you're watching the YouTube version. If you are catching us on the podcast, you can follow along in the download we have with this episode. So here it is. You take your gross revenue, your gross income. First, you subtract your materials and subcontractors, and that gives you your real revenue. And then you take your real revenue and you divide it into your profit, your owner's pay, your taxes, and your operating expenses, and you do it in that order. This form, and then these numbers here come from one of the formulas that Mike himself has developed from studying thousands of the healthiest businesses on the planet. And at a certain revenue level, this is what he's found the most healthiest businesses on the planet use for theirs. And then when they get to a different revenue level, they use a different formula there. And then there's a few other ways for them. What do you do with the profit? You take a quarterly distribution, you keep an emergency fund, you might pay if you're in debt, you pay 95% of that quarterly distribution to debt, and 5% goes to fund money for the owners. And then if you're not in debt, that full 50% quarterly distribution comes to you as the fund money for your business. So I made sure I put those in there too. But this is basically the idea here. And when you download this, you get a very basic version for yourself where you just fill in the percentages, maybe of your actual, maybe if you're at a different level of revenue, you can put that in. And what I like is that each month I can come in, or each paycheck, the 10th and 25th, if you follow that formula, I can put in my gross income and it'll tell me what amount to transfer to the different bank accounts associated with those accounts. And then on my quarterly distribution, I can put in what my profit bank account is, and it'll tell me exactly how much to distribute to myself. And if I have debt, it will there. So this becomes a handy tool as you're implementing Profit First as well. So get that download. And if you find this idea of profit intriguing, which I hope you do, if you want your business to last, if you want to avoid poverty and burnout, I believe taking a serious look at profit is a great place to start. And I haven't found any better system than the Profit First system. So to help you, if you're intrigued, I've got 3 resources for you. First, the book. I put a link to the Profit First book in the show notes. And if you get a copy, my biggest piece of wisdom is to do the action steps as you read about them. So you'll read what you need to do and then do those action steps. And I did some of mine because my business was just starting. It wasn't too complicated. I literally have a notebook piece of paper here that I did a bunch of my implementation on. So read a little bit, implement, read a little bit, and keep going there. The second resource is a podcast. I highly recommend the Profit First Nation podcast. It's a great way to learn the system and get some insights and stories that have developed since the book was first published. The host, Danielle Mulvey, is fabulous. Totally check out that podcast. And then my third resource is my mini course. It's a 5-day mini course that I have as my gift to you, waiting for you at fifemovement.com. And there's a day there, day 4, I think it is, titled Permission to be Profitable. If you're thinking, I'm not sure how I could ever be profitable, then this day's content is for you. Yet do the first 3 days, but the 4th day is specifically for you. And I break down steps you can take toward profitability for any business, even during a pandemic. So that's a lot of resources, a book, a podcast, a mini course. Pick the one that aligns with your learning style. Do you learn best from books? Then get the book. Do you learn best from podcasts? Then get listen to the podcast. Do you learn best from videos and hands-on practical assignments that you can do? Then do the mini course. And thanks for joining me and connecting with the Fife Movement. As you go about your day today, remember, wealth is coming your way. Your quest is to prepare for using it well. For more tips on how to prepare, be sure to subscribe, and to connect with the community, visit fifemovement.com. And if my gift has helped you today, please pay the gift forward by sharing this content with a friend. My gratitude in advance. To help this video be seen by more people, please hit the like button. We invite your feedback in the comments as well.